Recently, well-known leaker Sneaker SO has leaked that Xbox is going to go completely third-party. And I know I'm a little behind on this, but like, I kind of want to talk about it. Really not, is it going to happen? Because I actually don't think that's a question. I don't even think this counts as a leak, to be honest. Because are they not already third-party? What exclusive game is there really on the current Xbox at this point? I get that Halo hasn't gone to other systems yet, but it's kind of already been rumored heavily, if not leaked pretty heavily, that there's going to be a Halo remake for the original game, and it's going to go to PS5. And like, everything else is. Indiana Jones went to PS5. Cuphead has been pretty much everywhere. Ori's been everywhere. Even, like, probably their biggest title that's, like, really relevant outside of Halo, Forza Horizon 5, is on the PlayStation. You can buy that on PS5 now. What exclusives do they really have? It's not a lot. They have Halo, again. That's cool, I guess, but is anyone even playing Halo Infinite anymore? To be completely fair and honest in this, it's probably important, I do not own the current Xbox. I do not own a Series X. I did want one when it was announced, because I do like Xbox. I have an Xbox sign here because I do like Xbox. At one point, one of the ongoing things in this channel was me collecting original Xbox games, because I do really like the system. I do really like Xbox as a system developer. But ever since the 360, they had a really great launch with the original Xbox. I think the original Xbox is arguably the best system of that generation. While the PS2 has much more games, a lot of those games are just on the Xbox and are better on the Xbox. And even the GameCube, the GameCube is the GameCube. Like, Nintendo always has its exclusives, and those games are what make Nintendo systems valuable. The third-party stuff isn't really there for the GameCube. There just isn't a lot of it. And what is there is better on the Xbox, and really on the PlayStation. Anytime a game is available on the Xbox, though, I buy it. And again, that's why I have a growing original Xbox collection. I am working on completing that, but it's going to take time. But that was an ongoing thing on this channel. I made several videos of it because that's something I do really like. I like the Xbox. I did like the 360, although, again, it just doesn't have a lot for... I don't see a reason to play the 360. I have a Xbox Series X, and pretty much every game that's on the 360 just plays on that, or the PS3, so it's not really worth having a 360 to me anymore, which is an issue that I think people don't recognize. There's no reason to collect older Xbox games, which kind of makes creating like a fandom around it hard. Nintendo is very good at this. They have made a series of systems where people want their old system and they want their old games, and people don't really get rid of Nintendo stuff. When you buy the Switch 2, most people didn't sell their Switch or Switch games. Now, granted, obviously, younger kids and people who don't have money and, whatever, are going to do that to afford a Switch 2, but a lot of people have special Switches, and they have they have the collector's edition Switches, or even just, I have my Switch, and they have all their Switch games, or at the very least, they sold the Switch, but kept all the games because they're playable on the Switch too. There's this big push for, remakes and remasters of games, or re-releases of games on the Switch 2, the way there typically is for PlayStation and Xbox. And while, to be fair, the Switch is not the best example of this, I think the best example is everything before the Wii U. NES games did not play on the Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo did not play on the 64. 64 didn't play on the GameCube. And GameCube did play on the Wii, but there's some issues there with compatibility. So most people kept everything that they had from the one system to the next. And it creates a bit of a it creates a bit of longevity for these systems where you had them, maybe you had them as a kid because your older sibling had them as a kid. And that age gap meant that while you didn't necessarily grow up in the age range for those older systems, an older sibling did, or an older parent, or a parent did, and now you're playing them because they played it. For me personally, I grew up with a Nintendo and a Super Nintendo, but I'm not that old. Those systems were old by the time I was old enough to actually play games. My first real system was a PS1 and a 64, although separately, because that's the age range I am. I was born in the early 90s. By the time I was old enough to play games, the 64 was out, and the PS1 had obviously been out for a little bit. And while technically those were my older siblings' consoles, that's what I grew up with. But I had a Nintendo, I had a Super Nintendo, because there was no reason to get rid of them. You couldn't play those games on the newer system, so you had to keep the older system. They still had that relevance. Xbox doesn't have that. When you buy a new Xbox, you kind of just get rid of the old Xbox. They don't have that longevity to them. And this is something that they kind of did with the original Xbox. There's enough exclusives on the original Xbox that it makes it worthwhile to collect for. And so that's good. That's a good thing. But as you move forward in the generations, there's no reason to collect 360 games. There just isn't. They're all on other systems. They've been remade, remastered, ported to the Xbox One, and they play on the Xbox One. So no one has a 360 really anymore. And the Xbox One is basically useless. Everything on the Xbox One is playable on the Series X. Everything you have could just be played on the Series X. There's no reason to keep an Xbox One. And that is a good thing in some ways. But it creates this idea where Xbox just doesn't hold value. And that also means that it doesn't hold value emotionally, I guess is the best way. Like, there's no attachment to it. And I know that's a long-winded thing, but I say all that because when we come to modern Xbox, there isn't a fan base to really dive into that new console release without any reason to. When the Switch came out, it didn't really matter whether or not it had great games initially. Yes, having good games helps. Yes, having the games will sell the system, but it doesn't really matter that much. Like, it had a good launch title in Zelda, but it's Nintendo. Everyone who likes Mario, who likes Mario Kart, they bought the system knowing that in the future there would be games to buy. And while that's not going to sell every consumer, that carrying of a install base will help drive a system. And I don't think any system exemplifies that more than the PS5. The PS5 has no really good exclusives. There are a handful of games that are exclusive to the system, but so many games are available on the PS4. But the PS5 still sold insanely well at launch and was impossible to find for a significant amount of time based on the strength of Sony's IP and what they have done in the past. They had nothing to really show specifically for the PS5 initially. Like, what were the launch games? Returnal? Is that it? Like, Miles Morales was on the PS4. God of War Ragnarok on the PS4. A lot of the big games that came early in the system's life were also PS4 games. And while that's good, that's not necessarily a bad thing. When it comes to buying a PS5, you would think that'd be a reason not to buy one. But it didn't really work out that way. People just bought the PS5 off the strength of Sony being something that people have a attachment to. And Xbox doesn't have that. Because the 360 didn't really cultivate that. The 360 kind of slacked off towards the end. And the Xbox One wasn't good. It just wasn't. It promised a lot. And it never delivered. And then they promised more. And then they announced the next Xbox, and nothing was coming to the Xbox One. The Xbox One has a barren library. But that means that an entire generation of kids don't have that attachment to it because there's nothing to be attached to. And now, going into the Series X, it hasn't sold particularly well. And all that to say, I don't think it's a scoop to say that Microsoft is going third party. Most of their games are available on other platforms, and the few that aren't are rumored to be going to other platforms. And their own platform, their dedicated system, just doesn't have support. There's nothing to it. There's no reason to buy it. There's nothing to buy an Xbox Series X for, or even a Series S, really, unless you want Game Pass, which can also be added to your PC, although I do understand, as someone who doesn't play games on their computer, that you don't want to do that. That's kind of like the only reason to buy an Xbox, is if you want Game Pass. And now Game Pass is incredibly expensive. It's like, what are they, up to $30 a month or something? Like, now Game Pass is very expensive. So it creates this issue where, why wouldn't they go third party? Do you expect them not to? They don't really have anything to show for their first party. They canceled Perfect Dark, and I believe closed that studio down completely. They haven't announced anything, really, for first party games. The Hellblade was like a 5-hour game. It took years to make. And it's not lighting the world on fire. And I believe it even came... I might be wrong here. I'm pretty sure it actually came to PlayStation 2 anyway. Indiana Jones, like I said, came to PlayStation. Forza's on PlayStation. Everything's on PlayStation now. So, like, why would you even want an Xbox? What is there to the system anymore? They have failed to cultivate their brand into something people are tied to. Nobody's tied to an Xbox. And you can argue that whether or not that's good or bad for a consumer. I don't really care. I like the Xbox. I want to have a reason to buy one. And I don't. They haven't given me a reason to buy one. And it's been 5 years. I will not buy a Series X at this point. There's no reason to. It just doesn't have anything. So when their reports are coming out that, like, oh, they're going third party, and people are freaking out, and like, oh, they're not going to do that, or they should do that. I think you're missing the point. They already did it. They're already a third party company. Yes, they sell their own system. This isn't Sega going out of business and making only third party games. Yeah, they're selling their own system. That's one way to get to the Xbox Game Pass and stuff. But Game Pass is on PC. Frankly, if Sony would let them, they'd probably put Game Pass on that too. The same with Nintendo. They're already a third-party company. The real difference is, are other companies allowing them to put things on their system? Specifically, Game Pass. That's what they're selling. That's the only thing they're selling now. The system doesn't matter. The games barely matter. They're selling you a subscription service. Xbox is now just another Netflix. It's just another Hulu, or whatever streaming service you want, this time for games. That's all it is. There's nothing else there anymore. Yes, they still have their own exclusive games, but those games are only as exclusive as Game Pass is. If you can get Game Pass on anything else, they will put it on there. If they can get these games on other systems, they will put them on there. They are not a first-party system anymore. They are not a first-party manufacturer anymore. And they haven't been for basically the entire generation. Xbox is a third-party company now. Whether or not they want to admit it, whether they want to say that, for marketing purposes, really, for investor purposes, really, is a different topic that I don't really care about. And I don't think anyone needs to care about that. I don't give a fuck about their investors. Fuck them. I don't care. Why would I care about their money? That's not my money. I care about where I can play their games. And right now, if I want to, I can just go buy Indiana Jones. I can go buy Forza. And pretty soon, I can almost guarantee I will be able to just go buy Halo. And at that point, why would I buy an Xbox? I won't. Because everything's an Xbox. Xbox is just another brand now. It is not a system. It is not a first-party developer. It is just, we own a bunch of games, and they're on everything else. And they've proven this time and again. They bought Activision Blizzard, Call of Duty, Candy Crush, World of Warcraft. None of this is exclusive to Microsoft. None of this is exclusive, not even just Xbox. None of this is exclusive to Windows. They will put their property on whatever they can. Whoever will let them sell their games, they're going to put their games on. They're not trying to be first party. They just want their brand out there. They just want to sell you the game. And that's fine. But the Xbox as a dedicated system, it's dead. It's done. And it kind of has been this entire generation. And I think people acting like it hasn't been either don't pay attention or in such a Xbox bubble that they've lost their mind. Like, what do you... not to keep beating a dead horse here, but like, what are you playing on your Xbox that you can't play on something else? And if the answer is Halo, give it 2 years, and Halo's going to be on PlayStation. I don't see what people think is happening outside of that. And to follow up on more reports, there's been reports that the next-gen console's canceled, and then there was a leak of the next-gen console. And honestly, I don't care either way. I'm not saying that they're going to stop making systems. I don't think that they are. I think they're going to put out another Xbox because people like home consoles. People don't always want to play on their PC. They'll probably make another console. But the games will still be on PlayStation. The games will still be on the PC. The games might even come to Nintendo. Who knows? The Switch 2 is actually a lot stronger than people realize, I think. People are acting like it's just a better Switch, and like, yeah, that's what PlayStation and Xbox have done forever. That's all their systems ever are. It's just a better version of the same system. PlayStation took 5 generations to change their controller. It's always the same thing. The Switch 2 is just a stronger Switch. It's about as strong as a PS4 Pro. That's good. That is good enough. It can compete. It can run most Xbox games. It can run most PlayStation games without a problem. Yes, you're going to have worse graphics, but like, who fucking cares if it's portable? It's a give and take. But that aside, if Nintendo decides we want to allow Xbox games on there, or we want Game Pass on there, Xbox will do it. I guarantee you. And that will probably end up happening in the coming years. Xbox as a brand is just a third-party system now. Yes, they sell their own system, but you're not required to buy it. You can play all their games without buying it. That's just an option. There's no harm to them in having these options, because you never know. Maybe the next generation comes and they're, pumping out all these great games, and, the Xbox becomes worth buying again. That's completely possible. And they'll probably, at that point, they probably would backtrack and say, no, we're going to bring everything back in, and it's all going to be exclusive to the Xbox. I don't think that would go well with reception, but, they could do that. And maybe that's their plan. Maybe their plan is, we'll release everything third-party, try to build the brand back up, and then one day, if the system catches on, great, we have it, and we can, pull everything back. But it doesn't really matter. The reality is that right now, they're a third-party developer who just also happens to develop a system. I don't know. I think the people are blowing this report out of proportion. They're not telling you anything that you really shouldn't already know. Like, if you didn't think that they were a third-party developer before this leak, what did you think they were? They develop games for other systems. Yes, they sell a system, but they're developing things for other systems. Everything's on another system. They've been third party. This is just a leaker saying that that's what they're going to focus on, and they have been. This isn't a rumor. This isn't a leak. This is just a confirmation, at least to me, of what I already know. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.